Welcome, everyone, to a live edition of the podcast. I'm here today with my partners. It's still coronavirus time, so we're wearing our masks, but during this interview, we're taking them off. So, gentlemen, masks off. So, we've interviewed a lot of great people until now, and, I thought one of the best things we should do is interview my partners. So, here we are today. Anthony Gerasi, of Gerasi fame, and Nema, we all know Nema.
Of Nema fame.
So we're going to have some fun today. We actually went a little bit different this route. We went out to some of our friends and clients in the industry, some of our people in the office, and asked a bunch of questions. Got a bunch of questions from people who want to know more about you guys, your thoughts about the industry, thoughts about COVID, thoughts about yourselves. They want to know more about you. So we're gonna ask those questions and hopefully have fun with it today. So let's get started. Try to keep it a little bit easy first. So this question is from Huido over at Prico, our boy Hui.
Listen, I don't like where this is starting. This is not. Can I leave? Can I have my to catch a predator moment? Like, I'm out of this thing.
I gotta tell you, we asked some of the best questions. So the first question from Huido is: you have contributed so much to the private lending industry. What has the industry given to you personally?
Ooh.
Yeah, Hui's deep like that. Thank you, Hui.
You want me to start? You should start that one. What has private lending given to me?
That was good.
I mean, I've never had a career outside of private lending. I've done this my entire career. So it has given me everything, if you will. It's given me a lot. And, I'm asked a separate question sometimes is how did I get into private lending? And I think that's pretty well known. I started a small firm, left, and then started Gerasi. But maybe the thought process, what attracted me to private lending versus some other area of law is private lending is just, I guess, intellectually difficult, which is fun. That makes it fun for me, if that makes any sense.
That's true.
There's so many state and then federal laws that overlay and sometimes overlap, but some have floors and ceilings, and just navigating that space on behalf of our clients for me has just been, maybe the ultra nerd comes out, but exciting. It's been a lot of fun. So that's what attracted me to me, and then what it's given me is the ability to serve all of you guys in the private lending space. I hope I've contributed as well, but it's given me everything I have. So I'm deeply indebted to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? I think that the space itself really ties in with who we are. And what I mean by that, it's entrepreneurial, right? We represent a small contingency of non-private lenders, right? Your banks and those sorts of things. And it's given me a real thankfulness that we represent as many private lenders as we do, just because they feel they want to grow something big, right? And when we sit around, we talk about what we want and our hopes and dreams and where we want to go, they do the same thing with us. And so when you're counseling someone, like, you get excited, right? They're like, I want to build this rocket ship. Like, I'm going to crush my competitors. And you're like, I'm with you. Like, let's do this together. And it's the same conversations we have here. And you don't feel like there's anything blocking them, right? The world is their oyster, and they don't, if something doesn't happen, it's because it didn't happen on their watch. Right. And it's the same way we think here, right? Which is like, no, like, if it's impossible, it's because you haven't figured out a way to do it, right? And I love that about our industry. Right.
There's not a lot of roadblocks.
Yeah.
Right. These guys. We're working with a lot of the CEOs and decision makers. We're not working with a ton of contract administrators or general count. We're working with the guys who make the decisions. So, yeah, it's been really cool to see. We've been around long enough to see these guys. A lot of our great friends in the industry start from 2-man operation to now 50, 100 employees, lending nationally, managing God knows how many millions of dollars under their belt. So, and that's interesting to think. So that goes back to the firm, though, right? So I want to ask you guys. So Jaden. Our friend Jaden at Noble Capital and Private Lender Network. Friend.
We'll see where this goes.
Asked us a good follow-up question to this, and I like this question, is, so why did you choose to focus this law firm to this industry? Because when I first joined, we were doing a little bit of everything, right?
A little loosey-goosey back then.
Loosey-goosey back then, right? When we were in our sweatshop of horrors, when you were the only one that had an office. But we moved here and we doubled down in this space, right? In the private lending space. What? Why? Why did we choose to do that?
Why do our clients come into the space in the first place? And I think if you trace it back well before even my time and even bring it in now, is private lending was very fractionalized. You saw it as a very much a state level. If I had to rewind the clock pre-2008, which is the way I kind of look at things, before the Great Recession, it was very much a state level. I mean, your highest authority back then was really the state. All right, and maybe some truthful lending laws and some other federal laws you had to comply with. But after 2008 with the SAFE Act and a lot of different things, regardless of whether it was consumer lending, you saw very much this national presence now, and that was one of the reasons why I founded AAPL, was this now national spotlight within our industry, which honestly, if you didn't know somebody in it, you probably never heard about it before. It was a great niche secret of people who couldn't qualify with banks or needed a special deal. Hey, I've got this great deal. I need to close in 7 days. It was very much word of mouth. And a lot of credit, I think, to the crowdfunders and stuff like that brought a lot of attention to this space. But I thought that we could contribute, and why we doubled down on the space was there was a lot of fractionalization even within, and who better than I think the people who serve the industry to how can we serve you better? How can we bring in additional resources? Who can we connect you with? And how can we deepen relationships with our clients? Because at the end of the day, and selfishly, it was more of, we want to exist past lawyers. Right. And I know we've talked about this, the three of us, as far as what occurs when lawyers are just doing lawyer jobs. Right. And how do we get outsourced for that? But I don't think you can outsource relationships, and you can't outsource a person who can connect you to your next business deal. And that's what I wanted to be a part of. I'll let you.
And I think too, is I remember, I feel like 2015 or thereabouts is when that decision was really made, maybe in 2014, where we were trying to soul search about who are we, right, and why do we exist, really, right? So when we started creating values and all those sorts of things, and trying to really figure out organizationally what we were going to represent and what we were not. And we were having a soul-searching moment of are we a real estate firm? Are we a lending firm? Like, what do we do, right? And what do we say no to in that process? Yeah. And there was also kind of, I think, a clarifying moment. And there's plenty of books, Good to Great, and all these things that kind of say the same thing too, which is be the best at whatever it is, right? And in order for you to be the best at whatever this is going to be, you have to say no to lots of things. So I remember, like, before that time, we were representing like a student lender, right? And we're trying to figure out, which is like, it's a lending concept. Like, we're trying to be, we were trying to be this master of all, right? And what happens? We were pissing off our clients, right? You're out of your depth. I should have gone to an expert, right? Just as much as you go to a specialist when you want a brain surgery. You don't go to your pediatrician and be like, hey, I got an issue up here, right? Yeah. We're the same way. And so we're like, let's be the absolute best. Let's be the dominant force in this so that no one can touch us. Right. And I think that was really the soul-searching moment. And thank God we did. I mean, it's been the best. That really set the wheels in motion for our true growth.
Yeah. And when do you guys think that kind of clicked in the market? Like, we had worked very hard from 14, 15 into 16, 17, all these past years, we've been working very hard to build not only just the law firm, but the brand as a whole. But when you think it clicked in the marketplace that, hey, Jurassic really knows what they're doing, they're a representative of the industry. I like to think we're an industry leader. When do you think that happened?
It was AAPL. Very first. No, it was. I can pinpoint it for you. It was AAPL, the American Association of Private Lenders. Their national conference, the very first time you and I did a shake and bake on stage. 2016?
When I started flailing my arms and yelling at everybody?
Yeah, we did shake and bake. Shake and bake is I'm on the finance side, Kevin's on the corporate and security side, and we got up there and we just started talking about the marketplace. That was the first time we just started,
a while ago.
Rather than talking about, because usually when you go up on stage, it's what you got to sell, right? You want to buy a PPM, you want to buy some loan docs, and that's what everyone's up there on sale. And we said, no, like, we're going to talk about how to build a lending business. Right. We're going to talk about counseling our clients and how you actually build and scale this thing and what do you need to know to do it. And I remember, I felt like after that, the momentum was behind us. Because people kept coming up with this. They know what they're talking about. Right. These guys really know what they're doing. right? And it really started this concept of they're not just this law firm that provides legal services. They understand the business model.
Right.
And it really, to your point of relationships, it changed the concept of lawyers to what else do you need, right? We know the software side. We know, we understood all the components. So when we were up there, we had, I think, a conversation, and we were worried about it at first. We're like, are we going to actually, is anyone going to come back to us to our law firm after this, right? Because we weren't talking about the law firm at all. It had nothing to do with the law firm. It had everything to do with, here are what successful businesses that do what you do, right? Here's how they build relationships. We talked about building teams, about building your vendor base, about building your partnerships and your alliances, right? It was very much how to build the business and had nothing to do with what legal services you needed along the way.
We started discussing the blueprint of a successful lending business. Right.
And I remember from that point forward, I felt very confident that people understood that our depth was much beyond legal services.
How about you?
I think it was a great time as well. I think part of it also, that's definitely right around the time I think we were really building the brand. And if you guys probably recall, it was actually 2 months before that we had our first conference for Jurassic Media. It was Innovate in 2016. And that was just, I love how random ideas come together, and it was really great. Obviously, you guys were on stage there, but we had 160 people, and that doesn't sound like a lot for things, but it was our very first conference, and a lot of people, I think it showed a lot of trust in us as well. They had no idea what to expect from us, especially, but 160 people thought, well, they do good work, and I believe they're going to pull it off, and of course we did, and we've gone on to bigger conferences since, but I think those two together with our own conference.
That was the other, I think, tipping point for us as well. It demonstrated that people were interested in what we had to say.
We showed we weren't just going to be a law firm. We really wanted to be their partners in a lot of stuff.
Right.
So looking forward now, right? Because we have a lot of insight, and just by matter of representing so many lenders, we have a lot of insight into how this industry functions or doesn't function, right? Where are its strengths and where are its weaknesses? A lot of the questions we've been getting have to go to not just with respect to COVID, but also just the future of the industry and where you guys see it headed, right? And I think a lot of folks ask us that. Jan over at Arixa asked us that question as well. So where do you see this industry going, right? Because in 2020 right now, we're kind of in a crisis stage light, if you will, right? It's not like it's 08 again, but it's some tough times.
Yep.
And it's proven that some new solutions, right? Some of the institutional players came, having a little bit of trouble. Some other models were tried out. Maybe that may not work so well. So where do you think we're going to be in a couple years from now? Maybe that's about 5 years. Our industry. You think we're going to be like the conventional markets out there? Or are we going to be like just pure, conduit correspondent only? That's pretty much what the conventional market is now, right? And so, or is it going to be something else? Is it going to be something unique? Or is it going to be something fractured like it is today?
What's interesting is I feel like I had a great answer to this question in January.
Me too. No, I remember.
I felt like I know exactly where this train's headed.
Yeah.
Right?
I was interviewing Steve Paul at Anchor at Innovate, and I was asking him, and we're talking about it, and it seemed really, pretty clear.
Standardization.
Yeah.
Right? This was going to become a real product.
Yeah.
Real investors. Right? Everyone was going to understand it. We were going to be a commodity like everyone else. Right? We're going to be able to trade the stuff on the secondary market all day long because we're going to have standardization in every single aspect of it. Right? This fractionalized marketplace was going to start going away. Right? That was January.
It's July now.
It's July. I don't know.
Yeah.
It depends on how. Put it this way, I think the ultimate question is when capital markets re-enters, and what role they play will determine the direction of our industry.
Right.
Because we are at a weird juncture right now. One of two things is going to happen. Wall Street's going to come back in, and they're going to keep playing again, and we'll go right back down the road of standardization. Or they don't, right? And if they don't, then it goes back to the wild, wild west of everybody trying to figure out how do I basically make a simple business model and go back to that entrepreneurial spirit.
Right.
But one of those two roads will emerge. Right, and I think that's where the industry has to head.
Any thoughts on that?
A lot of thoughts. I see it. I see a combination. And on my LinkedIn, I think probably about 3 months ago, right when this was coming out, I said it was 2010. And for about 30 minutes, it was 2010. You saw Wall Street just exit. And that means, hey, we're back, double-digit returns, 4 points, whatever you could name.
Right.
And then catching up with clients, certain Wall Street players, or I should say certain players backed by Wall Street, are coming back into the fold. And instead of 12% and 4 points, we're back to 8.5 and 1. So more expensive than January money, but definitely a lot less than 2010 money. And I think there's got to be a world where both of those worlds coexist. And I just kind of take a look at how crowdfunding entered the market. You saw them enter the market. You heard about them 2010-ish, but I don't think it was really till 2015 on that you really saw crowdfunders really enter. And I don't mean to highlight them, but more of show how they operate. And these were definitely people backed by VCs and or credit lines and or both. And some of them are back, some of them are not back. But I think the key between that is their underwriting is tightened. They're unwilling to risk like they once were in 2010 to 2015. And if anything, they've become more conventional. Mm-hmm. But I have to believe that there's a world that exists where I've got a good deal, I'm going to exit it.
Yeah.
And so I see both worlds converging. How that plays out, I don't know. I wish I had a better crystal ball than I do now. But I think both of those worlds will coexist. Whether that's going to be different product types, or they'll just be a certain credit segment. I don't know exactly how that'll end, but I do know they'll coexist.
So I guess this kind of leads to another question, is a lot of people have asked us all this in private conversations on webinars. And, not necessarily crystal ball time, but, we're facing what can essentially be defined as at least an economic downturn, right? Unemployment is rampant, right? Interest rates are at zero. It's a pretty rough time for the economy, right? And so, Anthony, you founded the firm during the last recession, right? So the question, this is from John Beecham over at Tura Capital Partners. What piece of advice from your history in the last downturn, would you give others in this field when trying to navigate the situation? As Nema and I, we came post-recession, right? And we're recession babies, I feel that way. We graduated law school during the recession, so we weren't working in this industry during the recession. So,
yeah. So I can tell you what worked in the last recession. Hindsight being 2020, and probably what would work now is, as funny as it sounds, it's not the time to be creative. And what I mean by that is not the time to push 100% ARV into the ground with rehabs and stuff like that. Recognizing, no matter what it is, what is the end product? The end product is that new home buyer buying a house that your rehabber just fixed. Great, but if there's no income, there's no buyer. I think we can all see, as it stands right now, I think the economy is artificially propped up by the government. And as of today, that money runs out, as I'm told, unless they extend it.
Right.
So where does that go? I think watching the next 3 months. But I can tell you, now's not the time to go 95% ARV. Now's the time probably to go back to basics, if you will, 75% purchase price of property and let somebody else rehab it. That's not to say you can't get creative in property types. And I think that's what really shined back in 2008. You could see that, this will be funny, but rehab and fix and flip was a new product back in 2008. I mean, yes, people were doing it, but that became very popular as Dodd-Frank was just coming out, making the entire owner-occupied segment uncertain. No one wanted to touch it. Oh, look, fix and flip. Well, they're not going to occupy the property, but good returns, low risk of litigation, let's do it. And of course, now it's a staple of today's economy. So I guess the question comes down to, what's today's fix and flip?
Right. Some posit rentals, I don't agree with that, right? I think that there's too much reliance on the bond market, right? You need to securitize that product, it's too low yield, right? Some have said to me, oh, well, it's commercial credit, right? That market's still doing real hot. I'm like, well, a lot of those borrowers are starting to shut down, file for bankruptcy. Even the big box retailers are now essentially going under. J. Crew filed for bankruptcy. I can't think of any other brands, but a lot of big brands who are borrowing tons of money are folding. Right. So what do you guys think? Is there something new? I've always thought it's been, a lot of our clients have modeled their business, whether it's resi or not, they kind of look like a commercial real estate lender when you look at the way it's structured.
Yes.
Right? And they look at the transactions, whether it's resi or it's commercial, they look at it almost like a commercial real estate transaction. Right. You know, and not as a resi transaction. I always thought that, you know, mixing your portfolio and your capabilities into commercial would be a smart move. But commercial seems to be struggling as well. Right, and so what do you think? Is there anything creative you guys have seen lately, or ideas that you guys have been throwing around or hearing about?
I mean, I think the big one right now is this industry has always thrived on dislocation, and that doesn't change. Right. Where is there an inefficiency, market or otherwise, that I can capitalize on because the story makes sense. I can understand the exit, all the things, the standard underwriting side. I can. This doesn't make sense for a bank because it's too out of the box for them, right? But I understand how I'm going to get out of this thing. There's a clear exit strategy in place, and I can manage that risk. And I don't think that changes at all, right? I think if anything, those opportunities seem to crop up more. So while you have a freeze in the CLO and the CR, you have a lot of problems in the capital market side on that side of it. What that's going to mean is loan maturities still happen. Right? These guys are going to need loans, right? They are credit-worthy borrowers. They will get capital again at some point. Those markets will reopen. So perfect dislocation, right? Credit, and I think that's the right trend, to echo what you said, is credit-worthy borrowers, right? You're going to reduce your credit risk, right? And those stories are still going to pencil out, and you're still going to find your way through it. That marketplace is going to come back at some point. So you have to figure out where is that going? Is it 1 year? Is it 6 months? Whatever, right? So can you withstand the storm that's going to be? But those people will be creditworthy. The people that were creditworthy prior to this are still going to be creditworthy after this, right? You have an economic, financial dislocation is all they're suffering through right now.
So you build on that. So you ask it, and you guys are much closer to our clients than I am. I get on higher level conversations, but that's about it. But I'm going to go out on a limb, and my prediction will be consumer lending comes back. Because I think you have that predictability. They either have a job or don't. So you can predict whether they can, and it's a pain in the butt. You have to do ability to repay and all that other stuff, comply with Truth in Lending Act. But it's a more certain loan, I think, funny enough, than rehab and fix and flips is. Because the whole fix and flip market, absent, of course, there's people who focus on the higher end. Most of those people, though, are focused on the new home buyer. Right. And when you have unemployment, which I think we all recognize is in the double digits at a minimum, so call it 10%, but you've seen reports of 12%. Real unemployment could be closer to 20%.
Right.
Now almost your ability to repay becomes your shield. You know that this person has a job again. You know they can pay your loan.
Right. Goes back to credit and the ability to obtain.
That's interesting though, because we have had discussions about consumer bridge is becoming a new popular product. It's becoming more and more demand lately. People are leaving. I got a call yesterday. Someone told me everyone is leaving San Francisco and they're going to the neighboring cities and they need bridge loans to get to their next home. Or and you've got a lot of that happening. Home buyers. Home sales seem to be continuing, so I think that's
an important trend too. I don't think this is earth-shattering. I think you guys already see it, and I think all our clients see it too. But you asked about a comparison back in the last recession. The last recession, because lending was so fractionalized, if you were a California lender, you lent in California, or maybe Nevada or something very close. I think today's private lender is going to lend in any state that they can find a deal in, and have the confidence, of someone like ourselves, not to promote us, but ourselves, that we have loan docs in all 50 states, but also their network's bigger because they're going to harness technology more and more, because things like Zoom and all the things we're harnessing today is going to be adopted, and so they may not be, I'm a California citizen, I'm going to lend in California only. You're probably going to see California people lend in Kansas, Ohio, wherever that opportunity is.
I think the majority of folks now, the folks that lend only in one state are now becoming a minority. It's
correct.
I've just talked to one person in the past 3 months that lends only in California. I think everyone else is out.
And they're smart too. I mean, the interesting thing is the people that started lending the fastest were very much the people who said, okay, well, great, I can't lend in New York or the Northeast right now, right? But Kansas is doing great, and so you start immediately divert capital, right? The nimbleness of this industry is very interesting to watch.
That's true. Things evolve very quickly. Conference to conference, you hear about new models and new ideas from the same people. So let's shift gears a little bit, because we got some good questions about you guys. All right, we talked enough about we talked a lot of shop right now, talked about where the industry is going, but I'm sure the purpose of this podcast today was, we wanted to get to know you guys a little bit more beyond just the work, right? And the representation of the industry. So one good question to start us off comes from our friend Hui again. Is cheers to you, Hui. What are some principles you've learned throughout the years of working together that make a great business partnership? Right. A lot of our clients have partners.
Good.
They get into a lot of struggles with new partners. We've been partners for some time now, right? We're always working on our partnership, right? What do you guys think?
This one's easy for me. I hated Anthony for many, many years.
That sounds past.
And I still kind of hate you on various things. But man, I
So
thought...
hate your partners, people.
Yeah.
As you nod, by the way, when he says that. I saw that. Don't think I didn't.
Kevin and I hated each other. Maybe that's the root of a good partnership.
For you, baby.
It's just a lot of resentment and hate. Makes for great partnerships.
That's awesome.
And I had an epiphany. So we're all a part of Entrepreneurs Organization, and for me that very much helped me evolve my views on partnerships, on how to operate well in a business. The epiphany for me was I was constantly frustrated with what I thought were injustices, which I never communicated. So I was harboring all this ill will and resentment or whatever. And I think to a great degree, I thought we were the same person serving a similar function. And so I think it really challenged me because I thought, I wouldn't do it this way, or, why are you treading me on this issue? And so there's a lot of conflict, but the biggest challenge is I was never communicating any of this conflict. And so, and it really, it just kind of hit me one day of like, man, like, I bet this idiot has no idea what I'm pissed about. Right?
True.
I'm holding all these emotions, and I'm so upset, and I've never communicated to him, and I've never given him the opportunity to even like think what's going on in my head. And if I did, and if he tells me to go pound sand after I tell him these things, well, then I know where I should go. Right? If he's not willing to hear me out, if he doesn't actually see things the way I do, the way I think he thinks, then I know that I should leave this firm and I should go my own way. Right? And I remember coming to your office, and I think I literally was like, I have a lot of things to say to you. Like, I need you to sit down. And it just kind of unloaded on you for a little bit. And you just literally, so you gave me that fucking face, right? Excuse my language. You gave me the smirky-ass Anthony face. And you just sat there and go, all right, okay. I don't feel that way. It's not what I'm thinking, and I'm sorry that I've made you feel this way, but that's not where I'm at. And it really just resolved to me was from that point forward that rather than taking, and this is no different than a marriage, right? Rather than taking those little frustrations that build up and those resentments that build up over time, of communicating them early on and figuring out whether we actually, because most of the time when I've realized, especially with the two of us in particular, is that helped me understand our roles a lot more. Because I would say something that I was frustrated with, and in reality be like, I don't care about that thing. If you're frustrated by a thing, go do whatever you want. I don't have a dog in that fight. Go fix it. That's not my problem, right? And I really started understanding we had two very different roles within this organization. Same thing with you. And you and I kind of figured out our own role. And like, the more we figured out what we were good at, right? And what we sucked at, and what we didn't want to do or whatever, right? The more that we realized that we would compartmentalize and very much trust each other in those worlds, that forged the bond of like, hey, and it still happens, right? There will be still times where we get frustrated, we get in each other's faces about stuff, and more often than not, it's based on a failure to communicate early on in the process, right? And we quickly agree on whose lane is that?
Right.
Who's going to run that decision? And once we've determined that person's going to run that decision, the others step back quickly and say, cool, which one of us is the leader, which one of us is the follower in this particular decision?
Right. Reminds me of a conversation I had with Chris Ragland over at Noble about superpowers, right? He was telling me, like, these are the things that I'm very, very good at, and these are the things that I'm very, very bad at, or I don't care about, right? But it just happens that those are the things that Rodney's really good at, or Jaden's really good at.
Yes.
And so, they created a great team of their own by doing something similar, right? And then you see their dynamic, they've got a great team over there. And, for me, it was a struggle figuring out, like, what is that for me, right?
Yeah.
It's always like, I'm very passionate about a lot of things. I don't care about some things, right? And there are things that I get really amped up about, but trying to figure out what is that, particular thing that I really want to drive home.
Yeah.
It's also hard for a lot of people to admit, You know, we have a lot of clients out there who like, you know, they're fantastic originators, and when it comes time to talk about a fund, they have trouble acknowledging, you know, I'm not the best at raising money.
Yes.
Right?
The ego has to, and I will give credit. I will not give you any more compliments during this thing. Anthony's ability to put down his ego in areas, and I think it's very challenging, and we've communicated this before, is, you know, to be fair, is I had not practiced law before we met. So I was an idiot. And so you had to literally coach and mentor me and teach me everything there is to know about this area of law, and also to then have this same person tell you, that's not your decision, pal. Right? To have this, and to switch that dynamic from mentor and boss to partner is exceedingly challenging, right? And I think that's also really helped, is you've really figured out your own soul-searching way to let go of those grips, and that's not an easy task to do, right? Because I think more often than not, most people in your position will say, I got us here, I don't need you to get where I'm going. Right? So, and the fact that you do step back and say, no, I don't need to run that decision, even though you may feel strongly about the direction we're about to take, the ability to let go of that decision and give someone else the control of it is an extremely admirable quality that you possess.
And as a self-admitted control freak, it's difficult.
Well, we're all control freaks in a lot of respects, right?
Yeah.
That's the challenge, is letting go of that, right?
Yeah.
So that's the follow-up question to you, like what clicked in your mind? What made you realize, like, there are times for me there are things that I have to take control of, and there are things that you don't care about it, or is it like I need them to help me get there? What decision in your mind made you realize I gotta let go of a lot of the ego about this kind of stuff, if you will?
That's a loaded question, and there's a lot of layers within that too. So first, I think it's important. I wasn't going to go back to it, but I think it's important. You asked what makes a good partnership.
Sure.
And the foundation of everything, to me, is trust. We are going to screw up because we are human beings. But I trust...
I've never screwed up.
Never.
He's perfect, people. He's perfect.
But I trust that you guys have, not even for me, because it's not individualistic, you have the heart of the firm. Or you have the goodness of the firm at your heart.
Yeah.
And that's not feeding Anthony's ego, that's not feeding Anthony at all. It's what's best for the firm, not necessarily just for Anthony.
Right.
And you guys demonstrated that time and again with me. And I think that's important, because I don't, the first question I should not have to ask is, well, shit, do I need to go back and look at things they're doing, or where are they? Do I need to worry about where they're going? Right. And that's never been a worry for me. The second part is confidence. Part of it is back to the mentor trainee. I try not to, although part of the law, I think, is throwing you into the fire, which is a little bit true. You're thrown in the fire, but from my perspective, I'm throwing you a small part of the fire, like the outside of the fire. I can pull you back out if you're too deep in there, and then I let you go longer. And so for me, it's like the rope. First you're very tight, and I have the control, and then as you demonstrate it, let it go, to where. Now, obviously, you both are my partners, and you run your various departments as you will. I don't, outside of some general business metrics, I don't inquire as far as what you guys do, because it's no longer my responsibility. It's your responsibility. But that comes back down to the foundation of trust. I trust you guys will run your departments because you want the firm to grow, and you want the firm to be, a place for not just us, but for everybody here for years to come. So. The most difficult thing for me has been I've had to grow, I've had to change. I've reinvented myself probably 3 or 4 times since we started the firm. So,
well, you've changed, Anthony. You've grown, and the beard is coming in strong. I'm the only guy in the office with no beard now.
If you could grow one, you would have.
I would have grown one a long time ago. You know this, and it would have been perfectly coiffed and oiled and shaved. And we all know this. All right, so you talked about something earlier I wanted to touch on, and we got a good question about this. I wanted to ask. Adam Spay at Scotia Capital asked us the perfect follow-up question. Our good friend Adam has been with the firm as a client for how long now? Adam's been with us for...
I think since the beginning.
Since inception. 10 years, 11 years now. Thank you, Adam. Nema, tell us about your first day at the Rossi Law Firm. When was it, first of all? Because you've been here forever, dude.
Yeah. So I've actually thought about this the other day. You try to... What's that when you try to, get rid of your bad memories? Yeah. So...
Do we grab your resignation letter?
You actually, I don't even know if you remember this. You were not here. Neither was Christina. My first day here. You were in Italy. So I started here, and they were not here.
What year was this, first of all? What year?
This is 2008.
2008. So you're
I'm a summer here.
first year summer? You're in law school.
First year summer.
You're in law school.
Don't know up from down first year summer.
You're in law school. It's
I'm in law
your
school.
first 1L summer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know nothing, right? I'm literally an idiot. And I roll in, and I'm like, all right, cool. It's like, I'm so excited. It's my first day at the law firm. Like, this is what my whole life is going to be about. And the only other person there at the time was this degenerate person who I shared an office with, who basically was like a degenerate gambler, right? And so he would play video poker the entire time at his desk, right? And so I walk in and I'm just listening. I'm like, what have I gotten myself involved with? I then get on a call with Christina and Anthony, who are in Italy, and I hear Anthony like trying to do, speak bad Italian in the background, and I'm like, what is happening here, right? And there's and there's Christina, who's like literally treating me as though I'm like a third-year attorney. She's like, yeah, so I need you to write a demur. I need you to like do all these things, and I'm like, no idea what the words coming out of her mouth, right? And so I'm like furiously writing down in a notebook everything that she's saying, right? And she's like, do you have any questions? My only question I had with her was, what's a demur? That was my first day.
That's been a running joke here for 10 plus years now. Mm-hmm. And granted, 1L, he doesn't have to know about these things, but it's still.
I went to law school in Florida. We didn't have demurs there.
It's a fair question.
So you ask about what's a demur. We go from there and paint the picture for us. What was the firm like back then? How many employees?
Yeah. So
it wasn't when we were at Martin. Was it at
Martin? This was over at the Wells Fargo Tower off Main Street.
Okay.
Yep. And it was what I think a lot of law firms are, or solo practitioners are really small law firms, right? I think it was a shared workspace where we had shared copiers and shared receptionists and a lot of these sorts of things. You had your own receptionist for the law firm itself. It was really kind of a personal assistant. But this vision, the one thing I'm probably most proud of is to think about what that was and where we're at. So I remember at the time, this was back when you didn't have cloud servers, right? Mm. And so if you think about, you have like they're basically renting two offices, right, or three I think at the time. Christina had her own office, Anthony had his own office, and then I'm sharing it with the degenerate, right? And so that's it, and that's all the office space that's in there. And so you have a server, right? Because we're a law firm, and so he's got this giant server whirring up in the background. It's so loud that he's got to wear those little Bose noise-canceling headphones to get work done in his own office. And I'm like screaming over him in his office every time I'm talking to him, right? But like it's like the true like bootstrap organization, right? I mean, there's nothing, right? I mean, it is the true bare bones, like, and we're doing martini lunch, like, basically back then it was like, what do you guys do? Like, just everyone's getting wrecked at lunch, basically, right? Because you're like 3 people, you can do whatever you want, there's no rules.
Good old servers in my office days, I remember those.
Yeah. And now, for those of you who haven't visited us, now we have 2 buildings, in Irvine, California, down here next to the Spectrum, 90 and 94 Discovery. We all have these nice offices. Anthony's got this great space. He's got his own little video conferencing station, 3 conference rooms. How the firm has grown past 10 years, right? It's amazing. And before I really just there's no place for this question, so I'm just gonna ask it. Adam asked me this question. Honestly, I told Adam, you asked the best question. And this question is for Anthony, but I'm going to ask you both of you. And Adam, this is Adam's question. I'm going to read it verbatim, okay? Hair plugs, ? Yes or no? Adam, great question, by the way. There's no context for this question. I can't wrap it up.
No.
Let me preface. Okay, so is the question, I feel like we've got to answer 2 ways. One is, are you currently using hair plugs? And we need to give an honest answer. And then the second one is, are you willing to go down that road if necessary?
All right, first question, yes or no?
No. I should, candidly. It's getting thin up there, gentlemen. And am I down? Yeah, I think I'm down. I think I'm going down that road. I'm gonna get a lush. I just want like a just lush mane.
Who's that soccer player? Wayne Rooney. He got a bunch of plugs. He's looking good now.
Yeah.
So I don't have plugs. I actually whispered no twice in the microphone. The second one is I don't think I'm gonna get plugs. If I'm doing anything,
really?
I'm going bald.
You gotta go for
I'm gonna go full bald.
I don't know, man.
I'm gonna go Heisenberg.
it. Me too. If I start losing, I'm just shaving it off. I'm going to Michael Jordan and just cue ball.
I'm not sure I care. I'm not sure I care about
That,
the hair.
or I'm going to buy like a really sick ass toupee.
Yeah. Fair enough. Go just really over the top.
Just one of these.
That's awesome.
All right, so we want to ask some other questions about you guys because there's some really good questions here, right? So one thing that actually we also asked some questions from some of our favorite people in the office, and they asked some questions. This is actually a good one. You know, we're asked to make a lot of tough decisions, right? And whether it be internally or advising our clients. And this comes from Melissa Martorella. So what is your process for making difficult and risky decisions, and how do you get comfortable making them?
I don't think you do.
You don't.
You don't get comfortable.
You're not
I
that
don't
risk
get
averse.
comfortable.
You're not that risk averse.
Oh no, I'm not. But you asked about difficult decisions though. I've never gotten comfortable with doing it, but I recognize the need for it. Because here's by the way, this is a learned skill. This isn't something I'm born with. But I could tell you, I've seen so many times the results of not making the difficult decisions.
Right.
When you refuse to make the difficult decision, it's like, you know, if you just want to bleed a little bit versus your whole arm getting cut off, because it's one of those little fires that keep on burning and burning and burning until big fires. So that's personnel as well as other things. You know, I can tell you the number of times I've looked, and I don't look at our payroll anymore, but I used to look at our payroll, and I'm like, wow. Literally just wow. I was like, that number is always impressive to me. And even today, that number is very impressive. I was like, wow, that is quite the big number. Because that's most what we have here is payroll. But so I guess the process for making the decisions, one, do I have to? Unfortunately, the answer is usually yes. There has to be some action involved.
Right.
Because the inaction is worse than the action provided. And then it comes down to, you know, I don't want to call it logic-based because I think that's a cop-out, but really weighing the various answers, because I don't think there's just one answer. There's several different answers, and the whole idea is to come up with several different answers. Right. And then I like to, if you will, go down each rabbit hole. What is the consequences of that particular action? And unfortunately, I can tell you so many times where there's not just one answer, oh, this is the best answer ever. This is going to solve everything. Generally speaking,
here's 5 bad answers.
Yeah.
Which is the least? Which one sucks the least?
And you know, and I have different things depending on what's going on. You know, we haven't gone through too many turbulent times, but you know, the times we do, I like to say, if we're, you know, if you will, back to maritime, we have so many souls on board and their families. Yeah. You know, if I have to make that decision, we're going to have to make that decision, and you know, really have that discussion. Of what the decision may be. Some of them are fun decisions, though, even difficult. It's you know, do we have a number of conferences? You know, one recent difficult decision, I kind of had input on to your point, but I let other people make the decision, was, are we going to have an in-person conference?
That's a tough one. And
you know, there were so many, and talk about, because you guys were involved in the decision making too. There's literally data for and data against. Like there was such.
It was split right down the middle.
Yeah.
We really
And so what do you do with that? You know, it comes down to then what is the best decision for the people, and it's not necessarily what's best for us. It's what's best for the industry and what's best for the environment. You know, what's best for us? Let's put on a conference. Screw it. Let's just go. Right. And you know, everybody, whatever that risk is. But really, you know, the better part was, let's not have an in-person conference, even though that will cost us to get out of contracts and stuff like that, because it's not the right thing to do.
Right.
It's interesting because I mean I've actually always admired your ability to make decisions, because I think I am a generally indecisive person. So that's probably one of the biggest growing areas and biggest challenges. Being
it's been
thrown
the biggest
into
burden growing as a
it's tough, right? Because oftentimes I don't. My natural, I mean, I give you an example. Like I'll be the person on Amazon that reads 50 reviews on a bike pump, right? It's a $30 bike pump. Who cares? Like how. This is not a complex decision, but I'm going to want to read all the reviews. Like I'm the analytical thinker in the decision-making process, and so I can get, total analysis paralysis, right? And I can get bogged down in that kind of stuff. So, and that's helpful, right? I think when you're making, so I feel like that's a skill and that's useful, that comes in handy when it's coming to making big decisions. And I think that on that side of it, I'm generally, same thing too. Trying to think of the option, the worst case scenario, if I go ahead and do that, what happens, in visualizing what that looks like. But then also too is and it's very much my personality profile. If it's something that I don't feel comfortable in my own head on, and most big decisions are that, is I ask a lot of people. I will go around to people who I don't think have a dog in the fight and just seek their counsel on it. And I think that's the one thing that I really seek most is there's someone that I trust and know and care about.
Right.
And if I can present these facts to them and get their thoughts of it, and then they are oftentimes giving me windows of thought that I'd simply never had, and going, I never saw it that way, but I see what you're giving me an insight that I never had, and it helps me get the final determination.
Like Yelp reviews.
Yeah.
Right. No, it's getting insight into it's a challenge. Mm-hmm. I've talked with you about multiple tough things you guys have to go through on your team.
Yeah.
Decisions we have to make as an organization. It's been challenging, and the biggest thing for me has always been the ramifications you just did not see coming.
Yes.
Right. And we're suffering for that now, as with COVID. Right. COVID has resulted in so many random results that that came out of left field. Right.
Yeah.
So. And that's the kind of stuff like, damn, man, you just, no matter how many times you've been through it, there's always going to be that kind of, I did not expect that result kind of situation. And I guess that goes to furthering Melissa's question is like, how do you get comfortable with that? Right? For me, I have to tell myself, like, we made the best decision we possibly could, and it's better to act than not act, and, kind of justify it almost, right? Like, left, right, make a decision, go, right? And that's kind of how I look at things, but it's tough.
But I guess here's the thing is, if I've done that process, then I've done the right thing.
Right.
Right? I guess that it's not, if I can't with a straight face explain how I got to the result,
right,
then I just didn't do my due diligence. And I feel in this situation is, look, here's the why I made the decision. May have been the wrong decision, but I can articulate exactly how I got here and why I got here. You may disagree with my logic. That's okay. Reasonable people can disagree on whether you would have made the same decision.
And then that's the cusp of it. A lot of folks disagree with things, but they're like, they can't put themselves in your shoes when they're making that decision, right? They can't understand, like, what would you have done in that situation then, And then all they have is raw emotion about something that happened, and then now you're stuck with that bill, if you will, right?
That's hard. That's another hard one for me in particular is going back to personality profiles. My personality profile very much as me as a people pleaser, right? And so the first, in particular in a leadership position, that's a dumb personality profile.
On your back,
right?
Yep.
If your job is trying to please everyone on your team all the time, you will surely please no one all the time, and you will have a lot of people trying to burn you down the entire time. And I learned that lesson very much the hard way. And so getting comfortable with pissing people off and them questioning your judgment is one of the things that I think every person in a leadership position just has to learn and get comfortable with. And it's the same thing when I talk to people who are rising in an organization. It's just don't worry so much about. Be comfortable in your decision, right? You're going to come to the decision. Half of the people in the room are going to like it. Half of the people in the room are going to hate it, and that's okay. You don't have to try to get that 50% that hate it to agree with you. They're never going to, right? So be comfortable in the fact that be comfortable in yourself enough that it's okay that you made this decision, right? And don't feel the need to defend everything that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's an old adage: it's one way at the top. Right, and I think that's been some of my own growth that you guys may have seen also. It's I'm very much an affirmation type of person. I used to be, at least. I wanted affirmation, look at me type of thing. And over the years, I could tell you the higher up you go, the less affirmation you get.
Right.
No one remembers what good you've done. They do remember, however, what bad you've done.
Oh yeah. I had a conversation about that with one of our rising stars recently. Like, she loves credit. I told her like. It means you're doing a great job. It means you're rising, because if you're getting less and less applause, it means you are more important, right?
And there's a level I've gotten to, funny enough, I'm not saying it's good or bad, it just is, of self-affirmation. I don't really rely on anybody at this point to hey, good job or anything like that. They're for me, a good job is did I do what I said I was going to do and when I was going to do it?
Yep.
And the results were the results acceptable or even better than I was expecting?
Yeah.
That's to me affirmation at this point.
Cool. It's a good question from us. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I want to talk now about something a little bit more fun. So we go to a lot of conferences, right? We do a ton of well, we used to before the Ronas.
We're still going. We're going to help in Anthony's plane after this.
Yeah, we're going to Vegas, right? So we used to do it. We do a ton of conferences, right? And one of the questions we got, like, who is your partner in crime when it comes to the conference scene, right? Everyone's got one. I know who yours is, right?
Oh no, but I have two answers on that.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll let Anthony.
All right. Who's your partner in crime when you're?
Boring at this point, it's funny.
All right, fine. How about this? Who was your partner in crime when you were really running and gunning, right? And then nowadays, who's your partner in crime these days?
Well, gosh, I mean, again, that question spans 15 years of conferences. Generally one of our clients, at any given time. I mean, God. And different times too. I will give a captivating answer. I'm running with someone. I think it was there was a few of us at Caesar's Palace. We went to Omnia. There was a group of like 10 of us. So I think Jeff Tesh was there. I think John Angolia was there. A few other people were there. And as parties go, it's 10 p.m., 11 p.m., 12 a.m., and people start trickling out. Me and we closed down Omnia at 4:30 in the morning. We delete this if it gets you in trouble, but so we were out till 4:30 in the morning. I think we both got to bed around 5, and I literally had to get back up at 7 a.m. So
that was a rough night.
That was a rough night, but I haven't done that since. Other than that, it's funny. The latest, and it was the whole full thing. I mean, before that, honestly, the Armanino guys. So. I remember Josh.
They're all dads now, so they don't.
Yeah, they've mellowed out a little bit.
I have lots of stories. Anybody want to reach out to me? But the Dean. Dean knows.
I can see Dean.
Yeah. So it's different times, and now more. Maybe I've just gotten older, or I'm in bed by 10 p.m. at this point. I'm not running around because I'm tired, and I want to be fresh the next morning. So.
And so I've got multiple answers to this question. So when it comes to being productive at a conference, Melissa is my go-to. We will tackle this together. We will hold each other accountable. We will push each other through this. The person's go out there and make something happen, right? Melissa's very much that person for me. When it comes to the person who is generally not that fun unless he's a lot of fun, it's you, right? If you can get Kevin on a good one, you will have the best night of your life because as we call him, Dirtbag Kevin.
You need a lot of alcohol, and I need to be in Miami. Apparently, that's what it seems like.
But Dirtbag Kevin is a scene, and it's fantastic. It doesn't matter who you're with, how many people around. Dirtbag Kevin, it's great. The person who I probably enjoy from a outside party perspective is Jeff Tesh, and let me tell you why. So Jeff is the most optimistic human being I'll ever know, and I'll give you a quick story to kind of illustrate this point. Is we're at Omnia, and something's music's going on. They're doing it's Omnia, which is a weird place if you really think about it. If you just step a few feet back, there's what apparently the fire system is basically going off is what the equivalency is. Imagine your fire sprinkler system is going off every few seconds, and music that I wouldn't listen to anyways on a normal night, and it's just the craziest, I'm a father with 2 kids. I don't belong in that place. I'm not cool. Well done with all this. And neither is Jeff Tesh, to be fair. And so, but we're sitting there, and Jeff just puts his arm around me and goes, you know what? We work really hard. But this is pretty cool. It's pretty cool that we get to experience this. Most people on Earth will never get to experience this. Mm-hmm. And we're so lucky that we get to sit here this night and listen to this moment. And that optimism and that acceptance and gratefulness of all the things you got, I love people that love to just be thankful and grateful for where they're at in life. And Jeff, it really epitomizes that to me.
Mm-hmm. He does know how to have fun at those clubs, so I have to say, he knows everybody too.
Yes.
He raised that hand one time, we just right to the front. It was impressive. Okay, so we have another really cool question that I've actually wanted to know more about because I don't know enough about this myself. It actually has to do with you guys' childhood. So where'd you guys grow up? This is from Jan at Arixa. Where'd you guys grow up, and how did that influence your life path? Right? This is not just where you grow up, right?
Anthony is much more interesting.
You got a very you lived in Alabama, I think. Yeah,
I did, yeah.
Right. So like, where did you guys grow up, and how did that influence your life path?
I mean, I lived in 6 states and 30 different cities as a kid, so I moved around a lot. I think I kind of put my life story in a book, but I'll expand maybe on certain parts of that. Yes, I don't remember a lot before age 11, and why, I don't know. I never did the psychologist examine me. There's something wrong with me. Tell me why. I don't remember. I just don't. But moved around a lot as a kid, and it was more of my father being allergic to work than anything else, and so I made my peace with that. He did his best for what he could, but I think there's an old saying of don't wish for an easy life, wish for one of struggle and one you can overcome. And I've definitely had the latter. And I could say if anything has prepared me for today, it's been my childhood. So stuff like that. So, when I used to resent and be very angry about the way I grew up, I'm just, very grateful for the things that went on in the past. But so yeah, I've lived in 6 different states. I grew up. I started working when I was 13, 12. If you count.
What was your first job?
So my very first job was 12. I was a database programmer. You may remember this.
At 12?
Yeah. You may remember this. Do you remember DBase?
Yes, I remember DBase. You were doing that at 12 years old? How are you doing that at 12 years old?
It wasn't much.
I was playing with Legos at 12 years old.
That's what I was doing, man. It's just, I created a database. I was a newspaper guy, and he would pay me in Diet Cokes. So, there you go. 12 years old. Not the brightest.
The 80s.
Right? My first real job, funny enough, was at a cleaners in Indiana. I was 13, and I worked the night shift. And yes, child labor laws notwithstanding, I was just happy I got a job and making $5 an hour.
Right.
It's like, fuck yeah, I have some control over my life now. But yeah, those were some of the happiest times, and just working. And then I went to, my father moved us to Alabama, and that kind of picks up that story. I dropped out in the 8th grade because we moved around so much I saw no point in doing anything. I got my GED finally when I was 17 and went to college, went to Wallace Community College in Dothan, Alabama. Got my associates and then went to Auburn for a bachelor's in history. And then I'm like, Alabama, it's a great city, guys, for sure. It's just not for me. It was rather boring at the time. I was like, I do not want to go to law school in Alabama because I learned a statistic at the time. Wherever you go to law school, like 75% of the people stay there.
Yeah. Right.
And I didn't understand the mobility aspect at the time of the law.
So we'd all be in Birmingham right now practicing who knows what.
Who knows what. And that wasn't for me, so I applied and got into Chapman, and they gave me a scholarship. So I packed my bags, took a U-Haul out here, and moved to California in 2002.
So that childhood of yours, moving around a lot, having those jobs as a teenager, how do you think that influenced your path today? You have all kinds of random jobs as a young person, mm-hmm. right? A very young person, almost a child. How did that influence how you managed this firm to where it started to today?
Gosh, I can tell you very different ways I've managed it, right? Mm-hmm. Just because of who I was. Mm-hmm. And that almost goes back to my comment, I've had to reinvent myself a few times to get where we're at today. But I'll tell you, I think part of it is everything is based on a strong work ethic. And I don't know a single entrepreneur out there who doesn't have one. Jan especially, I know him pretty well, and I know what it's taken for him to build a Rixa. I don't know anybody who's built a company. Oh yeah, I only work 4 hours a week, and it's great, and all I do is work, nothing, and it just builds itself. There's that old adage of overnight success, 20 years in the making, and that's every entrepreneur I know. I don't think you get out of this easy. It's painstaking work, and so I think that's been my foundation, if you will, a strong work ethic. Versus when we started the firm, I was very much doing the work, and as Nema's calling Italy, I'm still very much involved in doing stuff. I was running our transactional practice at the time, and Nema was just helping out. And obviously now Nema's running our transactional practice. It's gone from really, I can't even call myself a CEO when we founded. I was just a doer, if you will, an attorney.
Right.
maybe, once we grew to like 5 attorneys, I was a manager. I was able to manage things, but there was no great vision or anything like that. And I think Nema hit the nail on the head when we all got together in 2015. There was a vision, and there was a need to be a CEO. Yeah. And again, I've seen myself, first doing stepping back, to where it is today. I've actually stepped back in a little bit, and that's okay because I know what my job is. My job is to go where I'm needed, and that will change depending on what the firm needs at the time.
Right.
So Nema, you grew up in Orange County like me, so I mean, like, not nearly as interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the where is not that interesting.
Right.
Right. The where. So for me, the interesting element is the who. Right. Who my parents are. Right. Because that really shaped my course. So, both my parents are Iranian, and so they came here in the late 70s to get educated and then to go back to Iran and live a great life. Right.
And the revolution.
And and the revolution happens. They're here. I'm born in 1982, and they and the revolution doesn't. Then they start the Iran-Iraq War, and they're like, I don't think we can go back there. So like, this America is our country, and our kids will be American, and like all the dreams of going back, just they're dreams. We're never going back home, as a family at least. And so. We grew up. It was interesting because they were very affluent in Iran, but that money pipeline. Because what's interesting in the Iran story is it was very much a revolution that switched the haves and the have-nots, right? And so they were, they had steady streams of money and everything coming in, and then this happens, and the pocketbook dries up. And my mom always tells me, she's like, when you were born, we had $500, and I was like, the hell am I gonna do with myself, right? She's like, I wasn't working. I don't know. I mean, I don't speak English, like all these sorts of things, right? Like this true epiphany of like, holy, like we don't even know how to exist in this society. And so the interesting thing was we grew up mostly in working class neighborhoods. And so we moved down to Orange County when I was young. I was about 6 years old. And Orange County was nothing back then, right? I mean, the most of the cities that exist there didn't exist back then.
Where we are right now used to be a big orange grove.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And so the interesting thing was I never understood that we didn't have money. I mean, my parents were fantastic at shielding the truth from me. And still this day, they are very good. Like, they'll go to the hospital and, like, never tell us. Like, they're terrible. They never want us to feel pain.
Right.
But the interesting thing was, circumstantially speaking, is they had they were in a really bad situation. Right, they didn't speak English well. Right. They were never going to be professionals here because of the language barrier. They didn't know how our institutions work. They had no idea how to. They were literally navigating a foreign system, right? And so for that like my dad drove a taxi until I was 14 years old, right? And that meant he worked 6 days a week, 14 hours a day, and I saw him on Sundays. And so that's all I had is the vision of what a father is, right? Is someone who's going to kill himself for his family. Same thing with my mom. My mom had a degree back in Iran she's a dietitian, and so she took that skill and started working at in various hospitals, and so she was gone all the time, right? And so for me, like, I didn't really know that there was a world in which your parents don't kill themselves, right? And for me, that was very easy because it took all the options away. I never had a thought process of like there was never a question of whether you had to work hard in life. There was never an alternative to that. And so all I witnessed my whole life were two people who were killing themselves for their family, never needing to communicate that they were killing themselves for the family because it was just what I got to witness with my eyes, right? And so that really guided me. It was very interesting to me when I started going to school and other things, and I started taking my own life very seriously, was I just found myself being able to outwork most people because that was like all I knew, right? Like there was never an excuse. Like I could never be like, oh yeah, like I don't need to work that hard. Like my mom didn't speak a lick of English. Right. Do you know what I mean? Like, and they like if my parents could do, like, what was my excuse going to be?
Right.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And so, and the beauty of growing up in South Orange County is you're around a bunch of affluent people, right? So we were the poor people around affluent people, and so
entitled people too.
But it exposed me to a world that I never understood. I was like I remember being in high school, and like I'll give you a story of like just to illustrate like the gap in the world. And I, for the first time, I've always been a car aficionado. Like I've always loved cars. And back then, when I was growing up in high school, the Dodge Viper had just come out.
I remember. Yeah.
So I was talking to one of my classmates about the Dodge Viper, and I was like, "Oh yeah, like I've got the model car. Like I'll bring it in." And he's like, "Yeah, we've got one too, right?" And I bring it in, and I was like, "Yeah, this is the version." I go, "Oh no, we have the car."
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, like I've got posters of it in my room." and I have this model car. Oh, but you have the actual car.
Right.
And it was like, wow, like the world is so big.
Right.
And the opportunities are so different. And so, but that was the best blessing of my entire life, was to grow up without, right? Because like, I now am terrified, and I'm sure you guys are kind of in a similar vein, is my kids will not experience that, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what drove me to kill myself. And they'll never get to witness that. So they'll see me work hard. That's fine, whatever. But they won't see me struggle like my parents struggled.
Let me ask you this though, right? Because it translates through various different experiences. I think for you and I, immigrant family experience.
Yes.
Right? It's embedded in the immigrant experience.
Yeah.
For you, a very unique childhood. You were
Or white trash.
There you go. I didn't want to say it, but he said it for me. So yes. At the end of the day, very similar experience in the sense that you have to work hard, and that's all you're taught.
No alternative.
No alternative. Hardest working in the room.
Yep.
I was taught the same thing. My parents always told me, you look different, you're going to have to work twice as hard, be taken seriously. It's just the life we were taught.
There's something to be said about removing the safety net, and I think I speak for you guys, but I definitely speak for myself. There was no safety net. There was no going back.
Right.
There was no option to fail.
Right.
If that means I'm working 20, 22-hour days and I'm not sleeping, so be it, because the option is there isn't one.
Right. No, and I think it also, if you look at kind of some of our friends in the industry and favorite clients in the industry, people we respect, they kind of have the same work ethic.
That's the story, right?
Right.
Yeah,
those brothers, man, they work
that
so hard.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys are on the road nonstop.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Tedesco brothers. And, they built that business from nothing with just literally just spit and bubble gum. Just in grit, and that's something that I respect immensely. And you see that over and over and over again in this industry, I feel like. As opposed to a lot of other, I worked in other industries before, and you see a lot of just kind of what I call institutional people, Harvard grad, always worked on Wall Street, comes from a rich family kind of person. You see it, they don't really work that hard. You try to reach them at 3:00 in the afternoon, they're not working.
Right.
So, all right. So last question here, and this is a good one to close on. And I think this is from Hui. Yeah, this is from Hui. And I don't understand this question really, but it's a really dope one. All right. So, question from Hui Do from Prideco. There have been many iconic duos in history: Han Solo and Chewbacca, Jordan and Pippen, Thelma and Louise, Ace and Gary, Cardi B and Offset, Harry and Lloyd, Tyler Durden and the narrator. Which do you identify most with?
Wait, personally? As a duo?
As a duo. As a duo.
As a duo?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because before I became in the mix, it was you guys, right? So now we work together on a lot of things. But for me, it was you guys, right? And I did preface these questions about I'm asking you guys questions. So,
I'm trying to think of are we Rich Katz and Greg Bernstein? And who is who?
Shout out to Rodeo Capital.
And which one of us is which? We may have switched those roles. That's probably the best duo that I could think of.
I think it's changed. Funny enough, over time, back to that whole thing about how things change. Maybe it was Batman and Robin at one point.
Yeah.
And that's clearly not.
Yeah.
But it's funny. We joke a lot about how we're often wearing the same outfit and everything like that, same shirts. But obviously,
except Nema started wearing these striped, colorful shirts with flamingos on them all of a sudden. I don't understand it.
So maybe it's Tyler Durden, the narrator. Because they're one and the same type of thing.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. And they now have beards. It's just. He grew a beard, and it got really awkward. Now everyone has beards, and okay, guys. Well, honestly, this has been great. We never have an opportunity to kind of get your guys' thoughts and insights and get to know you guys better, because a lot of folks know who we are, what we do, and they don't really know much about what's going on up here, where you guys come from, all that kind of stuff. So really, thank you guys for taking the time today.
Wow, thanks for having us.
I really hope that a lot of our question askers are listening in. If we can give any closing remarks, do you guys want to give any closing remarks for the audience out there listening in?
All I'll say is that the questions and the people who ask them are really indicative of why I love what we do. I really love what we do. and I'm so thankful. This was accidental. I mean, we didn't talk about this, but we joked that Anthony won.
It was a random idea on a Tuesday afternoon, and I just started asking our friends in the industry, ask us some questions, So
and it reminds me this is accidental how we got here, right?
Yeah.
But I've always envisioned in my life that I would be a small fish in a big pond kind of thing. I always wanted this institutional, wanted a Fortune 500 name. I've always wanted this in my mind, right? It ended up in an industry in which we very much ended up being these big fish in a small pond. And thank goodness. You know what I mean? This is it's because every time you say a person's name, I can start laughing. I'm like, oh gosh, it's Hui. What's this guy gonna have? What's it up his sleeve, right? And it makes me miss Hui. Right? You talked about John, oh man, John's gonna ask a smart question. John's a smart guy. Right? You really get to know that it's not just in Canada, we don't do that much work with either of them. Right? It's not because of this business relationship. We're in this space where we got to know these people. You know what I mean? We're so I'm gonna have my Jeff Dudley. We're so lucky. We're so lucky to be in a place where you can meet people, be genuine with them, get to know them, get to know an industry. I don't know, man.
And they're so influential too. They have their own insights. And they're leaders in their own right in the space, and to be able to just know them and even have that kind of colleague relationship. You wouldn't get that in that other fact pattern. In that, you're not gonna do that with a CEO of some of I don't know Fortress or something like that. It's not gonna happen, right? And that's the beauty of this space, I think.
Right. It's funny. I'm sitting here and realizing I've done this 15 years now, and it's funny.
Old man Gerasi.
I am an old man now. It's weird to say, right? I can tell
Moses' beard is coming next.
pretty much. I can tell you how in the industry I was called the kid, right? Back in the day, and it's funny how what was before. And as we were growing, very first days, in private lending, myself in 2005, you in 2008, and when were you hired?
2012, I think.
12?
12? 13? I don't remember.
It's really, clients, and obviously we've got mainstays like Adam, Socotra, and all those people, but really being the old guy in the room is kind of weird in the sense of who I grew up with in the industry. I can tell you one thing that's been really interesting. It's the same game, but it's played differently. A lot like poker in my thing. People, I saw people come and go early on, and there's quite a few people, obviously, that are mainstays. We talked about Steve Pollock earlier, right? Yeah. I remember Steve Pollock since my day one, and here we are 15 years later. So there's always going to be the mainstays, but there's also going to be newcomers, people who are attracted to the space for whatever reason.
Right.
And I think that can only make the industry stronger and better. Because I can tell you one thing, private lending will never go away.
Nope.
I mean, if you look at the Truth in Lending statement, it was created because of private lenders back in the 1960s. This industry will survive one way or the other because it's always going to do what banks won't.
Right. Yeah.
So, it's to me, it's been a joy. It's been my entire career. Will always be my career. And it's just been a joy to see the different ways our clients solve issues because I love solving it with them. But also, I love being just a part of it. It's something to, if you're part of the bank industry, if you're part of different things, almost to your point, a small fish in a big pond, what can you say you've contributed?
Yeah.
And my goal, at least I hope people say, is we made an impact in the industry. And that's all I can ever hope for.
I think we already have, but I think we continue to. And credit to you, Nema. A lot of the legislative activity you're doing has helped shaping the way this industry is headed. A lot of the recommendations of the quote unquote blueprints and the business models that we've been pushing over the years have been shaping the way people are doing business in this space. And you see that, right? You see a lot of folks. And I had a phone call the other day with a client, and he told me dude, actually it wasn't me. Olivia, my associate, had a phone call with one of our clients who has been around for a couple years now, and he was talking to an investor, and the investor said, "Oh, you use Gerasi. You got street cred with me now." And that told me, wow, we really are making a difference. If a random investor in Orange County knows who we are and acknowledges that client for using us, that is influence.
What's funny is that happened to me. We were at MBA earlier this year, and we were out at a bar, and I met some attorney at some big firm, and I said, "Oh, I'm at a little boutique in Irvine. It's Gerasi." She goes, "We know who you are." Right? I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." You know what I mean? It's interesting, because that wasn't the intent, right? It wasn't this design of but I just feel like especially this is the three of us, genuinely care.
Right.
Right? And like have just genuinely tried our best and our hardest. I was talking to, we have summer associates right now. Every year we bring in summers, and they're, idealistic and all these great things, and it's awesome. And we were talking, and they said, kind of tell me a little bit about kind of the culture, the best way you can describe it. And I was like, it's honesty to a fault, right? And I'll give you an example. I was like, we are oftentimes overpaid in a loan closing transaction. So what will happen is we get our fee in the settlement statement, or we've gotten paid in advance, and then another check comes in, and I go, every single time we'll send my check back, right? Because that's not our brand. It's not who we are, right? Because all we need to do is care about you 150% every single time, right? And then the money will come. We're never going to think about the money first, right? And I think that's really helped us. And we've never thought about building all these things. It hasn't been like, oh, I can't wait to, I hope these people recognize it. It was just like, do the right thing all the time, every single time. And if you do that thing every single time, then all the great things come alongside with it. It's just, it was never our intent, but it's great that it got there.
Yeah, I think it ties to just like service in a certain, kind of mindset, right? We've always, and it's kind of interesting, like the three of us all have a background in retail.
Yeah.
Right, and I always talk about like, and even Ruby, she's got a background in retail, and like when I hire, I look for a background in retail, like, and the customer service focus and the relationship focus, and that kind of stuff is lost today in a lot of the business models you see out there, online shopping and all that. But we've been doubling down on that for the past 5-6 years now, and I think it's really I got asked the question recently, like, what is the X factor? And I tell them that it's basically like, we've got a bunch of friends in the space. We've got friends.
You don't want to let them down.
Yeah, we don't want to let them in the industry because they look at us and they're our friends. A lot of the people out there, they may not even be our clients, but they're our friends.
Yep.
So, all right, guys. Well, that's it for us today on the podcast.
Thank you, Kevin.
I hope you guys had fun with this great bottle of. I just realized
this is delicious, by the way.
I just realized this whiskey is 56% whiskey.
Yeah. I realized it about halfway through this. So,
Cheers. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.